Let us take a moment to talk about Perfumes, a new weapon type introduced in the DLC that rely on a moveset of entirely AoEs. None of these weapons get parried, and all these weapons scale dex, typically alongside some sort of other stat, dealing typically some sort of elemental damage. Now, the reputation of Perfumes are heavily mixed, scarred by the introduction and removal of bugs, especially the one with Rolling Sparks, which resulted in comical levels of damage, and Poison Mist Spray, which resulted in deleting entire teams with stupid status effect buildups that could result in instant death blight. Some would argue, after the removal of these bugs, Perfumes were gutted, that they were no longer good DPS options and no longer good DPS weapons. However, it's more complicated than that. So then, let's take a moment to look at Perfumes as actual DPS options, tools, and weapons. Starting off, of course, with the worst option, the deadly poison perfume. There is no better way to put it. This thing is generally horrible as a DPS tool and option. Compared it to all the other perfumes, this right here struggles the most. Even in an optimized build, it takes way too long to kill a mid-game enemy. And being a Dex Arcane weapon, there's many better ways to apply poison. Beyond that, you could also go for a bleed build instead. Compared to this weapon, which has a low AR and kind of mid-status build-up. It is the only one that cannot be infused or given a skill that can actually help it perform well. It cannot get Endure, cannot get Bloodhound Step, and it cannot get Rolling Sparks. Those just simply aren't an option. And to put it this way, even with an optimal poison setup that can result in multipliers upon multipliers of damage, it took longer than any other perfume without any buffs. While a perfume such as Rolling Sparks or something like the Venomous Fangs with the buffs could just nuke down one of these mid-game enemies within seconds. So as a main DPS tool, I would not recommend it. However, to apply poison to yourself to actually gain the poison buff, specifically the Mushroom Crown or the Lord of Rot Exaltation, yeah, it actually does a pretty good job of that. It's just not good as a weapon at all. It has almost no redeeming qualities as such. However, the same cannot be said for the next on the list, the Frenzied Flame Perfume Bottle. Now, this one isn't horrible per se, it is actually much more niche. Having slightly higher than the Poison Perfume at level 150, it can actually have the highest overall damage when you look at players who are max level. However, most players do not play the level, so that is going to hurt that in this metric. However, the fact that it gives you some frenzy buildup does add some pressure in PvP, and the fact that it can be customized makes it so there's going to be more overall use scenarios for this perfume. Now, if you're not phantom hitting that much and you're actually dealing the fire damage enough to kill them fast, then the Fire Spark Perfume is just going to do everything this does, but better. Sometimes the frenzy buildup just struggles and people can't have boluses for it. Additionally, it does about 30% less damage than the Fire Spark Perfume even at the level 200 bracket. Now, this is like the last perfume that actually struggles because the next three can actually be good in some scenario. In fact, for number 3 on my list, I'm actually going to put the Lightning Spark Perfume. Now, this used to be the undisputed strongest, mostly due to a bug that resulted in doing double damage, which allowed it to do some insane damage with Rolling Sparks. However, with those issues fixed, it does slightly more damage than the Chilling Mist Perfume bottle, but it doesn't really have any stats build up to go along with it. And while yes, some buffs like House Brewery and Golden Vow can make it outperform the Chilling Perfume bottle overall, you're looking at taking more damage, which is maybe not worth the investment. Additionally, Dex Vape builds are actually less popular than Dex Int builds, so there's definitely less room you're actually going to be seeing this weapon in general. However, with the advent of much more better and optimal ways to build Dex Vape weapons, this right here actually gives a lot of incentive to actually pair this alongside one of these builds. However, there's so many amazing ways to do lightning damage, both single target and AoE, that this right here struggles to keep up. Now for number 2 on the list, the Chilling Perfume Bottle. Now this right here is very similar to the last one, but with intelligence. It's important to know that this right here doesn't add too much new. Both Dexterity and Intelligence scale in Cold Ashes of War and have incredible methods of doing both magic damage and frostbite buildup. However, the Chilling Perfume Bottle actually does build well into this. Beyond that, it also kind of pairs well with the Fire Spark Perfume or any of the other perfumes in terms of resetting frostbite buildup. Now, with weapons like the Deferential Spear and the Wing of Estelle, this is already trying to fill in a niche that is already well established, and it's not only incredibly powerful but comparable to some of its peers. Overall, it does about 5% less damage than the Lightning Perfume, but because of frostbite buildup, it actually ends up doing more. The biggest use for this is being a Giant Slayer tool, and a way to do magic damage without using any FP or use a weapon that weighs more than a pound. Now on to the final perfume, and the one I consider undisputably the best, the Fire Spark Perfume. This one right here actually does something new, and that is Dex Scale and Fire. This actually does about as much damage as Catch Flame when using it, with the cost of 0 FP, making it very similar to many pyromancies, but without the building FP cost. This one also does the most damage out of any other perfume by a large margin. In fact, looking at an optimized Lightning Spark perfume, it will do an average about 15% less damage than this one. This is why overall I rank this one as the best perfume. This is kind of unfortunate because while I do like the Fire Spark perfume, it does perform pretty relative to pyromancies. It's the only perfume that I would actually recommend going in a mainline build. However, I do think you should at least look at the Lightning Spark perfume as well as the Chill and Mist perfume and try them out because they could actually be somewhat useful. That being said, remember that perfumes vary more than any other weapon, mostly due to the fact that their scaling is kind of weird, as 3 of them scale near equally on 2 stats. Compared to the Fire Spark perfume, which only scales on 1 stat, and the other perfume, the Frenzied one, scales on every offensive stat outside of Arcane, which means it's going to vary wildly on which one's best based off of level alone.